Good evening, everybody. I hope you can hear me. Welcome back to day 13 of our Inside Out Mental Health, Faith, and the Whole Person. Wow. Inside Out Mental Health, Faith, and the Whole Person workshop series. It's really good to have you all with us tonight as we continue our journey of exploring mental health, identity, faith, and well-being in a very real and practical way. So, if you don't know, my name is Chi, and as tonight continues, the theme for today that we'll look at is purpose under pressure. Just a bit of housekeeping. Tonight's meeting is being recorded for YouTube. If you have missed any of the sessions, they're available on the YouTube playlist, which I'll link in the chat. Because we're being recorded, I would encourage you not to share anything personal that you wouldn't want online. All resources, etc., books, websites, organizations, numbers, they're going to be put at the back of the workshop booklet, which I will attach as well in the chat. I think that's all from me. So, to begin our evening, we're going to have a short devotion and opening prayer by Nicole.
Hello, everybody. Let's open with a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to reconvene together again today. I pray that whatever we hear today, we can take something from it. And I pray that throughout the rest of this Mental Health Awareness Week, we can take what we learn and apply it to our lives. Amen. As today's title is Purpose Under Pressure, my devotion will be surrounded around that. The primary text I'm focusing on today is Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper, not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Many people in the Bible experience pressure from David to Elijah and even to Jesus Christ himself in the Garden of Gethsemane. Pressure is not a new thing, but especially in today's generation, pressure can begin to distort both your identity and your purpose. Sometimes pressure makes you chase expectations rather than a purpose. People around you may pressure you to live a life in a certain way, go down a certain career path, pursue certain relationships, or become a version of yourself that God never actually called you to be. And when that happens, it can lead to emotional burnout, constantly trying to please people and achieve goals that you never truly set yourself, but instead goals that others dictated over your life. Eventually, many people begin hiding their failures and struggles from others, especially in church spaces, friendships, and even their own homes, because they feel ashamed that they could not fulfill expectations placed upon them. But one thing the Bible reminds us is that God never asks us to carry this pressure alone. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy burden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28. As someone who's personally experienced struggles with external pressure and has now found a greater peace, I can recommend a few things that help when dealing with pressure. Firstly, establish your own personal close relationship with God and build a strong prayer foundation. Throughout the Bible, people like Moses and Jesus constantly returned to God in prayer before facing pressure. When pressure comes, your relationship with God is what should be your anchor. Secondly, find the right people to lean on. People who genuinely care for you and listen to you and want the best for your life. God never intended us to do life completely alone. Bear ye one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6, verse 2. Thirdly, learn the importance of rest. Sometimes we become so overwhelmed, we trying to survive pressure that we forget to pause, recharge, and breathe. Even Jesus stepped away to rest and pray. And finally, through all this, God can still guide you toward your purpose. Even when you feel lost, overwhelmed, uncertain, or pressured, God is able to direct you to your path and lead you wherever you need to go. Purpose may shape the season you're in, but does not cancel the purpose God has for your life.
Okay, thank you, Nicole, for that devotion. To now move on to the next section, it is my real privilege to introduce our speaker for today, who is Dr. Thandi. She is an international medical graduate, community-based researcher, and an interdisciplinary leader whose work sits at the intersection of healthcare, education, leadership, and community development. Originally from Malawi and now based in Canada, she brings a truly global and people-centered perspective to conversations around health, equity, identity, and cultural people-centered perspective. Alongside her medical journey, she is also a passionate storyteller and facilitator and has a strong background in youth empowerment and leadership development. Through her platform, Tea with Tandy, she uses storytelling and dialogue to support growth, reflection, and self-understanding. And tonight, as said before, she'll be speaking on the topic Purpose Under Pressure, exploring what it means to navigate adulthood, identity, comparison, uncertainty, and expectation while still holding on to purpose, mental well-being, and self-awareness. So please join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Tandy.
Good evening, guys. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here tonight. Let me just get my slides um, and sorted. But also kind of like set up. I know it's kind of late and it's the middle of the week, but if you don't mind dropping an emoji in the chat with how you're feeling tonight, what is the space that you're coming in today with? Sometimes I say thumbs up, thumbs down, middle as well. This was a bit of a meh week. Okay, awesome. Okay, I know you guys can see my slides, so let's get cracking. Well, yeah, officially, good evening, and thank you so much for being here tonight. I really appreciate you all taking the time. First of all, I want to thank the organizers of Inside Out, mental health, faith, and the whole person. It's such an important topic, and creating these spaces where we can have honest conversations about many things that people struggle with silently. It's literally what I do for a living, but it's something I think that everybody needs to really appreciate and try to find ways to really integrate it into your life. Pressure, identity, fear, uncertainty, shame, burnout, loneliness, the list goes on. The quiet questions that a lot of us as young people end up asking ourselves around, am I even good enough? Am I falling behind? Am I a failure? Will I ever figure it out? I'm here to say that I have questioned myself, and I do question myself often, and it is normal, as we'll kind of discuss. But my session tonight is called Purpose Under Pressure because whilst I believe so many of us are called to do great things, to do beautiful things in this life, the pressure is usually what gets to us in the end. And pressure is a really insidious kind of feeling. Can you guys see my slides okay?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, pressure is a really insidious thing because it creeps up on you. And if you don't deal with it effectively, it can oftentimes lead to really unfortunate situations. And usually it's for our negative, for our bad. We're all trying to balance so many different expectations from family to culture to career. And honestly, it can become exhausting. Adulting is exhausting. And that's what I tell my patients all the time. As we're in this space, I know a lot of you guys have your cameras off, but I really do encourage you to really like take part in the activities and the exercises that we have. I want you to start right now, wherever you are, by with your toes, wiggling your toes, and then squeezing them or scrunching them up as tight as you can. And then do the same with your hands, and just progressively try and squeeze every single muscle in your body that you can feel or think of. So from your calves, your toes, your thighs, tense up and count to 3. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and then relax and let go. And as you know, you're feeling your muscles relax, just kind of wiggle your shoulders, relax, especially if they're tense up here. Relax your shoulders. If your jaw is clenched, I'll invite you to kind of relax the muscles in your face and your jaw too. Okay, so one of the reasons why I chose this topic is because I deeply relate to that tension very personally. Chichi has done an amazing job introducing who I am in terms of my accolades, but on a more personal level, I'm also somebody who's struggled with my own mental health in my journey too. And I've helped and have supported people in those positions from various different backgrounds. Uh, I don't think there's anybody here on this call tonight that can say that their life is 100% perfect as it is right now, and they are at their peak happiness and peak contentment. Okay, let me try and let me just reshare my slides. Okay. So tonight's session, I don't even want to go over, my goal is not even to go over the facts and statistics when it comes to mental health. I think we're all very aware of, what mental health um, really is. And I think we're all aware of, just how many people silently struggle and, navigate this life. And the statistics are scary, to be very honest. However, oftentimes the numbers don't tell the full picture. And when I was reflecting on why, I ended up working in mental health. So as Chichi mentioned, I graduated from medical school and I'm now a training resident family physician here in Calgary, Alberta, in Canada. And along that journey, I found myself drawn to women's health and mental health, especially mental health when it comes to our communities of faith and supporting people from the African, Black, and Caribbean communities, but then all people in general. Mental health is one of those things that's treated like still today like a nice to have, right? If I don't have time, I that's like an accent to it's a cherry on top. And in reality, there is real need for our communities and us as individuals to start to see mental health as being the foundation towards other aspects of our health. Why does mental health matter to me? Like a lot of you growing up here, I wasn't always a person who fit in at school. I was bullied at times. And I also experienced the pressure from my parents to go into certain careers or the cultural expectations to do the right thing. There was oftentimes a lot of feeling the pressure to be perfect, the pressure to perform, right? To do things in a way that is pleasing to others, but inside you might be dying and not really acknowledging. I grew out of that, and that's all I can say. Growth is a work in progress. However, it often, starts with a baby step and breaking things down and understanding and learning and being able to reflect and sit down with yourselves, like we're doing today, but also having the conversations to ask yourself the hard questions and do the hard actions. I always say that taking care of your mental health, it's simple, but it's not easy. It's simple in that a lot of the things that we're discussing today, you've heard it 100 times over. That's why I don't even want to go over our facts and statistics. However, it's hard in that you need to do it consistently. And why does it matter? Well, it matters because you're loved. You are very deeply loved. And even if you're not somebody who feels like you love yourself yet, there are people around you, there are people you don't even see or acknowledge that see you and appreciate you for being you. Mental health matters a lot to me because when I was 16, a close friend of mine in secondary school actually took her own life, and she was 14. She was 2 years younger than I was. A good friend of, a lot of people around me, even my sisters. And when it happened, I remember everyone at my school feeling very shocked, like this doesn't happen to teenagers, right? I think sometimes when it's an accident or it's a disease or it's somebody that's older, we it's still just as difficult, but we can often make peace with the fact that they would have been here if they wanted to. And it was the first time I was understanding that mental health and the things we say and do to others and the things that are said and done to us can really have tangible, permanent impacts. And so I made it my mission, or it became really important to me after that, to really pour into what is my purpose, number one, and how can I support others to grow out of whatever they're growing through, or to grow through it, is what I like to say. You never get finished, you never become a finished, perfect product, but that's not the point of life. So mental health matters because it is the fuel or the engine that will actually get you from a life where you're struggling, miserable, hiding a lot, buried in shame, unable to connect with the people around you. Just, it will bring you from that life, having correct mental health tools, strategies, a community and family to support you that actually is supporting you where you need it. That takes your life to a whole different level. And again, I said I'd touch on it, but outside of, me finishing medical school, I've, I've been very blessed to have beautiful experiences, to travel, to achieve my dreams, to try various different things. And I always say it would never have been possible if not for the people around me supporting me in my mental health. And that's what this session here tonight is. It's very discussion based. I'm not doing any kind of statistics. And my exercises, I really want you to engage and, if possible, share in the chat if you're comfortable, or at least go on mute. If there's anything that I bring up that resonates with you, if there's anything that prompts a story or something or quote that you'd like to share, I really invite you to do that, because that is what, number one, shows me that you're listening and that you're not asleep. But number two, it also, brings this from me talking at you about mental health and this being a presentation of things you already know. And it brings it hopefully to real life. And hopefully from the discussions that we start today, you're able to take away something that at least one thing that you can apply in your life. So as we're kind of starting, if you have a pen and paper, I highly encourage you to get one and, jot some notes down. I probably won't do breakout rooms, but all my activities are designed that, think about them, write down your own notes and thoughts. And again, no need to share, but I really encourage you to write it down with pen and paper and not type it as well, because that's another neurological kind of way to slow down your thinking and your your mental kind of overload or your mental capacity. So write it down. As we kind of get started, what does mental health mean to you? Why does it matter to know? Why does it matter to learn about? And the two main questions I want you to think as we go throughout tonight's session: so what? So what is the point? What do you do with this information? What is the point of attending tonight's session? So what? What is the significance to you? We can discuss more at the end about your thoughts. But so what? What does mental health mean and matter? And then now what? What are the actions or next steps you'd like to take given anything that you kind of learn or explore in tonight's session. So we'll come back to that. But so what, now what? Let's start with mental health a little bit, right? Mental well-being more than anything. Again, this is not new knowledge. I know I'm preaching to the converted here, but I think it's always important to kind of start with a little bit of context that, your mental well-being or who you are as a person to do well involves so many different things: emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, the social, but then also the physical, right? So your emotional is your ability to process and also express feelings like joy, like sadness, like anger. A lot of our favorite people in the Bible, even Jesus, expressed anger, expressed emotions. So I want you to, bury that seed very deep that expressing your emotions is a good thing. It is a very needed thing. It is a very human thing. We have so much data and scientific evidence that, kind of shows that. But outside of, the data, you can try it for yourself. When you felt really angry and you've, I don't know, gone to a rage room, or you write it out, or you dance, expressing it often helps you to process emotions and feeling. And I always say that, emotions or crying and expressing them, that is the pressure valve of the heart. Your emotions are the pressure valve of the heart. As things start to add up and weigh on you, being able to express it will take or relieve some of that pressure. Now, I know that we are in societies or in spaces where you have to perform. You don't have time or room or space to be an emotional person. But that's where being intentional and planning out your time and planning out spaces, being very thoughtful in curating the ways you will check in with yourself and allow yourself to regularly get that off your chest rather than waiting for it to be crisis. So psychological, social, and spiritual, we'll talk about the next two a little more in today's session, but these are just generally the main components of, being a well put together or well balanced individual. That is what's, again, going to give you the capacity to do more and to do, better quality things so that you can live a better quality life. I'll also probably mention that if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to dump them in the Zoom chat. And yeah, we'll probably just explore them as we kind of go along per slide. But let's cover a few different things I'll run through, and then we'll do our activities. Pressure in adulthood. We're not unfamiliar to this. Pressure is oftentimes silent. I know that when I was experiencing the pressure of preparing for medical school or even failing my A-level exams the first time around, right? That took a hit, and I often felt like I couldn't talk to anybody about it. I couldn't, because this was my dream. There was so much pressure to only show the highlight reel when we're talking to people, not just family and friends. Hopefully your friends are a space that you can be more honest with them. But even if they're not, just know that it's normal. Pressure often looks like comparison, overthinking yourself and your decisions, being burnt out, excessively. And people ask me all the time when I'm providing counseling, what is burnout? And I'm oftentimes like, it is you running out of energy and then some. It is the feeling of being behind. It's the being exhausted and not able to continue to do the things you need to do. Fear of disappointing others, feeling worried, hiding emotions, performing strength. That is pressure. And that is oftentimes a thing that I feel like a lot of us do without even thinking. It's almost second nature to put on a strong front. However, that in and of itself can be a weight on your shoulders, and that slows you down in life. There's the African proverb, if you want to go far, go together. If you want to go fast, go alone. I think that it's important that as we're kind of considering, how you want to move in this world, pick the seasons and the types of moments in your life where you want to go with people so that you are going far and that you are treating life or that experience as a marathon and as a endurance test. And then there are moments when you need to let go of whatever is holding you back and embrace almost the speed of it, embrace just learning and trying new things without pressure added on you. So pressure in adulthood, it's normal, no matter what stage you're in. Trust me, even as I've achieved certain things in my life, people are still putting pressure on me to do other things. And you really have to ask yourself, number one, how many of these things on the list am I doing? And number two, whose idea or whose version of your life am I living in carrying on that pressure? So my first activity, feel free to do it either individually. I'll probably give you guys like 60 seconds. I'll give you 90 seconds, a minute and a half to just reflect on how you're managing your life right now. So let's do a quick mental health pressure check-in. We're very used to doing blood pressure checks and everything. Every single, health event, there will be a BP check. Let's do a mental health check. Green, you could write it down or you could share an emoji or something along the lines of green if you feel like you're managing things okay, if you feel comfortable sharing. Orange if you're feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes, you're in the middle. And red if you're drowning or struggling more than people realize. Again, you don't have to share this directly. You could also, I guess, even share a private message if you wanted. But as you kind of decide where you're falling in with that pressure, ask yourself, I would feel, or answer the question, what would make things feel lighter for you? Finish the sentence, I would feel lighter if. And, don't overthink it. What is immediately coming to your head, just kind of jot it down. And I'll give you guys like 90 seconds to do that, a minute and a half. And again, if you do feel comfortable either unmuting in a minute and a half, feel free. What would make your life or your current stage lighter than it is right now? And be so honest with yourself. I always try to say that if you can't be honest with yourself, who else are you going to be honest with? So meet yourself where you're at. How are you managing your life right now? And what would make things lighter? Oh yeah, awesome point. Yeah, you can use the anonymous button as well. Okay, wonderful. Give you like 30 more seconds. Sorry, my cat is meowing. So let me...
Okay, we've had some come in the chat in the anonymous Q&A one. We have bad, green, okay, sometimes. Someone said overwhelmed.
Great. No, thank you for sharing. And for those of you who, really did engage in it. Um, it's important to be honest with ourselves, and it's important to be honest with the fact that, you know, the world already, the external world is already um kind of chaotic, and it's okay not to be okay in these times, and it's okay to also look around at the people around you and not judge others for not being okay. I wonder if anybody would want to share what they would like to let go of or what would make them feel lighter. I don't know if any came through the anon, but feel free to also type it. Um, how, like, I can also share too. I believe in leading from a places of like authenticity and yeah, authenticity and growth. And so I feel like if you can't be honest with yourself, then you don't know, where you're going to grow to next. And I'm definitely an orange at the moment. Sometimes I'm at a green, but I'm working towards that. Feeling overwhelmed sometimes. I know I would feel a lot lighter if I had more time in the day. Yeah, I definitely would feel more lighter if um I had a bigger paycheck, for my bills and everything. But I know as well, I would also feel lighter if, I know for me personally, if I was in a very sunny country, like most of the year, that would be really nice. I know my mood would feel a lot better if I was, um, in a different environment. So, I encourage you to continue, jotting down what would make you feel lighter. Think about what
Mm.
kind of themes kind of popped up the most for you. Uh, was it people stuff? Was it material stuff? Was it external circumstances? And if there are external circumstances, like I have an exam coming up, my parents are doing this, or, I don't know how I'm going to do XYZ, think about whether or not those circumstances are something you can change, number one. And note that. Is this something I can change? It might be something that you're genuinely, definitely worried about, and it's very valid. But also note down, maybe this isn't something I can change right now. I also want you to reflect on which pressures do you hide the most, and maybe start to ask yourself why. Really reflect out of this list of the things that are kind of impacting me, why, like, what am I comfortable talking about and what am I not comfortable talking about. I can, maybe 80 to 90% um assure that, like, that most of you have at least one thing that you are struggling to talk about or to share or to overcome. And that in and of itself is a pressure on your shoulders. They say that a problem solved is a problem half shared. And I know in our, current society and even our current generation, there is oftentimes a reluctance to talk about certain things because of how people will perceive you or whether it becomes gossip, etc. And I want to kind of, remind us that there are many ways to tackle these challenges and pressures that you still are able to achieve connection and still are able to share things. So we've talked a little bit about pressure. What do I do? Just because someone looks okay doesn't mean they feel okay, clearly, right? We've all kind of shared that a lot of us are struggling or we're not in the best places. What do I recommend people do or start with when it comes to building your kind of mental resilience? Observe, reflect, and challenge. Observe. We started the session by doing a bit of a muscle relaxation, but throughout the day, as you kind of go out, you go to work, you go to school, you deal with different things, by the end of the day, I want you to start to take mental notes, really observe the physical signs of stress that are showing up in your life on an everyday basis. If you really feel like being intentional and taking it to the next step, write it down every day. I want you to like keep a log for at least a month on the physical signs of stress that are showing up in your life. Are you snapping at people? Are you very forgetful? Are you finding that you have headaches all the time? Note it all down. I then recommend people schedule at least one intentional rest moment throughout the day, really. But if you've never done this before in your life, just try and schedule a time for this week, a time where you're resting and you're reflecting on your, mental well-being and how well you're proactively taking care of yourself. I want you to practice admitting things to yourself. You don't necessarily have to say, I'm struggling right now. I do believe in people speaking positively over their lives and, you don't need to identify with, the struggle or the stress or the negative emotion, but I want you to at least practice admitting if you are not feeling great or what it is. There's 101 of those emotion wheel pillows, and I'll probably send a link and resources to Chi Chi afterwards to share with you guys. But I highly recommend you get a pillow with an emotional wheel on it so that when you're having these check-in times or you're even having conversations with people, it's easy to kind of pinpoint and say, you know what, I think in this moment, I'm not just feeling sad, I'm kind of feeling a bit of grief because of this thing or something that I lost. Start naming and admitting some of these. I then want you to take it to the next level if you're able to. And yeah, feel free to, take a screenshot or, I can share the slides after if you request. But if there's anything in your week that is unnecessary that you are committed to, I want you to try removing that, especially if you are in the red category of, you're really overwhelmed and struggling. Put at least one thing down. Challenge yourself by increasing your capacity and emptying out the unnecessary. This is one of the biggest things I advise even youth leaders or people who are looking for, career advice to grow. I've worked at some very big international and national nonprofit organizations and NGOs based in Canada, Africa, and in Asia. And the one thing that always comes up in my training sessions when I'm talking to other youth leaders is this idea of, I have so much to do, everything is important, I don't know how to do it all. And I'm here to tell you that you're not meant to do it all. That's not the objective and that's not the point. So identifying as many things you can take off of your shoulders or your plate as possible will be very key. Observe, reflect, and then challenge yourself to do the actual action. Okay. I want us to talk a little bit around comparison, social media, and a bit more on identity. But before we kind of do, I would love if you guys could, number one, mention if you are active on any social media platforms, what platforms. Either mention what platforms you're on and you regularly use, or if you're not comfortable sharing that, you can share the number. So I know that I probably use Pinterest, and Pinterest does count as social media. But if you'd use Facebook, Instagram, you can just write 3 platforms. And you can put that in the chat and mute, send it through the anon button. Again, I 100% know that, the facts, the statistics, we're all aware of how prevalent social media use is. It's just a part of normal everyday life for a lot of us, right? For a lot of young people moving in the world. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Instagram, okay, TikTok, and these are all very scroll heavy platforms as well. YouTube too, yeah. So 2 questions now that you've kind of identified the platforms that you use or how many you're tuned into. Number one, if you had to give it a positive or negative rating, how positively are you using these social media platforms for your good, for your development, for your well-being? And no need to answer it, actually. You don't need to put that in the chat. But I just want you to think, if I'm on Instagram, most of the time, am I using it for my good? Or is it more so to distract myself? Question. And then the second question I want you to think about is, how much am I unconsciously kind of absorbing about other people's lives? And I say unconsciously because we all know that comparison is the thief of joy. In my opinion, I've always said that comparison steals clarity. When you are exposed to and continuously going through new media and feeding yourself all this different information, even when it's good, I liken it to, you're disturbing the waters a little bit. You are filling your brain with all of this junk. Well, let me not say junk, but you're filling your brain with all of this stuff, right? And it takes time for your brain to let things settle so that you're able to see things and process things clearly. I don't know if you've ever noticed it. And if you haven't, you might want to challenge yourself to do this as well. And you can jot that down. But spend a day or two without going on any social media platforms. Now, I know some of you will say, no, but I need to talk to my so-and-so, da, 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 da. Okay, tell that person I'm not going to be online for the next 2 days. I have streaks and stuff to do. Well, that's why it's a challenge, right? But I really want you to try and give yourself 1 or 2 days, 48 hours, that's it, without social media. See, observe, reflect how you feel, number one, but then the elements of clarity that also start to pop up. So when it comes to actually finding your purpose in this life and your journey, it's important to realize that it's not a race. It's easier said than done. When we constantly compare, even unconsciously, we lose gratitude. Gratitude is a very big component for our mental well-being. We rush our growth. We ignore our own journey, and we tend to tie our worth to achievement. LinkedIn is one of those platforms as well that these days I feel like for a lot of young people, it causes a lot of anxiety. It causes a lot of comparison because you're seeing all these things that other people are achieving, not knowing what they did to get there and not being grateful yourself for what you are actually, doing in your space that you're in and the resources that you've been blessed with. What can we do when it comes to social media and comparison? Number one, I want you to know, if you are going to take this challenge seriously, how many hours are you actually spending on social media? Give it a number and then challenge yourself to cut it down subsequently. Replace social media with actually being social. We'll talk more about human connection a little bit, but social media is, in a lot of ways, trying to replace the social part. And research, study, experiences have always proved that actually being social and involved in something will beat what social media can do. So use it wisely. And then number 3, I want you to really start to think about, if you're the kind of person that posts or the kind of person that comments on things, why are you doing it? Internal versus external validation. Are you doing it so that somebody else can say, and it doesn't matter what they're saying, right? Are you doing it for somebody else to applaud you? Are you doing it for somebody else to, feel sorry for you? Are you doing it for any reaction to be elicited? If it's external validation, I want you to start to question that, because that's where, if you give others the power to build you, you will also give them the power to break you. Remembering and reminding ourselves over and over and over as we use and engage these platforms that someone else's success is not proof of your own failure. I think that's very important. At every stage, no matter how successful you feel like you are, it is not proof of much else than you having achieved that thing. I've talked a little bit about identity and how we can reflect a bit better. I don't know if there are any questions before we kind of continue on. Let's see in the chat. Or any, yeah, if there are any questions or any comments that people want to bring up or is resonating with them, please do share. Another key component when it comes to really taking the pressure off when we're trying to find ourselves, and more than anything, find our purpose, right, is to stop identifying with your mistakes. Saying, I am the mistake, or I failed this, or I am a failure because I did XYZ, that's a shame-based statement. And I want to challenge all of us to really start moving away from shame-based statements and move towards growth. Everything, if you've noticed, that was created is growing, it is changing, it is evolving, it is becoming different every whether day, minute, second, year, decade. Why? Because that's how it was designed to. And we as human beings are designed to grow as well. Shame oftentimes is the acid to a soil. Shame stops you in your growth and can kill you off completely if there's enough of it. So stop identifying with your mistakes, stop identifying with the bad things that have happened to you. I know we've talked about acknowledging things, but growth says, I am more than that. Healing begins where we're actually honest with ourselves. And that's why, when it comes to leadership and when it comes to actually even doing well enough in your career or whatever you want to do in this life, you need to learn how to be very honest with yourself so that you can actually, address and heal the things that need to be addressed and healed. I'm going to give us I can give us, I guess, 2 minutes. Just kind of think or reflect to yourself. What's one thing that you're trying to forgive yourself for? Now, outwardly, I know that statement might be like, I don't have anything to forgive myself for. I'm not, I've not done anything bad. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know. But I want you to really try and reflect on, where do you judge yourself harshly? What is an embarrassing or cringy or situation that often comes up to you when you're not expecting it and you hate to think about that thing? Whether it was a presentation that you bombed once, or a mistake that genuinely, led to something bad. What is something that you're judging yourself from and you're still trying to let go or forgive yourself? I want you to write this down if you're able to. Oftentimes, these things come up just before we're about to fall asleep. There are actually studies that kind of show that the brain kind of, uses that time to start reflecting. And a lot of times we reflect on negative or bad experiences to protect ourselves from going through that again. Our brain is desperately trying to rack, what can I learn so that I don't have to go through this again? So I'll give you 2 minutes to kind of start thinking about that or writing it down. No need to even share this, but yeah, if there is anything you feel like sharing, please do send it in the anonymous box. I'll give us 2 minutes.
Somebody has said failing exams.
That's so real. Sorry there. That's really real. About another 60 seconds. And maybe even as you guys continue to think, I'll definitely share a story, because it's like, I don't know, yeah, Chichi and we've known each other for a number of years, right? But when, I don't know, when we were teenagers, the way you look at life, or the way you look at life when you're younger in general, is always going to be very different from when you've kind of overcome something or gone through something. So an example I always give is, do you remember how excited and scared people were to go to secondary school? Year 7 was like this big, like, it was this whole thing. It was like, wow. And in 5 very short years, it feels like, at the time it probably dragged, but in 5 years it's over. And now, I'm not going to give my age away, but like, it's a while. It's been a while since I was in secondary school. And then the way that you kind of reflect over things in the past, it changes. And the way and the lessons that you kind of taken away from it also change. And I bring this up to say that, it's, again, easier said than done. But when you are experiencing something, it's hard, or it's oftentimes referred to as like the mouse view. You're experiencing it on the ground, as a little mouse kind of going through it, and it is difficult, it is scary. And so, the person who talked about failing exams, that is really real. I've cried so many times over exams that I failed. There were so many times on my, for example, career journey where I didn't think I was going to make it. I said, if I fail this, if I have to do this. And, again, those moments, number one, are normal. But number two, the pressure, it's important for you to release that pressure. It's important for you to know that, yes, okay, it might be normal, but express it. Talk to somebody about it. That's why I'm asking you to reflect on it. Let it out. One of the biggest tools that helped me on my journey, even as a career, even if you're not like a very creative or literary person, even if you're just focusing on career growth, journal about it, write about it, pen to paper, think in ink. It cognitively helps you let things go, slows your thought process down, and you're also able to then read your thoughts, opinions, fears from last week, last year, 5 years ago, and actually recognize how far you've grown, or areas where things aren't no longer a concern for you, right? So one of the things I always used to do after exams, when there was so much pressure to succeed, especially when you want to go into a competitive field, but I often also felt like I wasn't good enough compared to my peers and compared to my other students. I was not an A-star student without studying all the time. On one hand, there will always be pressure to work hard and do your due diligence. I'm not saying don't, right? Don't make yourself feel better for doing nothing. You know, if you're resting intentionally, that's not doing nothing. But it's very also important that you let go of that pressure after you've put in your best effort. My approach to exams would often be, study like there's no tomorrow, put in as much work and effort as possible, cope with the pressure as best as you can. But then afterwards, after you've given it your best shot, you've played the cards you've been dealt with, let it go, pray about it, let it, give it to God, journal, and move on. A lot of your success as an adult and in your career, but also in your relationships, will be how quickly you learn to move on and how quickly you learn to let go of the pressure and continue to move. So we've all had time. I don't know if there's anybody else who shared, but whatever you've kind of written down, what you're trying to forgive yourself about, I really want you to challenge yourself to stop using insulting language, stop using any phrase or any kind of approach that you wouldn't use to somebody that you deeply love. If it's your mother, you would not say to your mother, or maybe some, well, I hope not. A lot of you, I hope you don't say to your mother, I'm disappointed in you, right? If you truly love somebody, you would use language that is caring. A phrase somebody used really recently to me that I absolutely love is, you must learn how to be compassionately critical. Learn how to be compassionately critical with yourself. Focus on your progress instead of perfection. You are not trying to be perfect. Nothing you create, you are not God. Nothing you create or do in this life will be 100% perfect. So stop trying. Instead, focus on progress, focus on the outcome, the impact, and the intent. And I say this with all honesty in my heart. When you move like this consistently, you'll be surprised the kinds of blessings and doors that open for you because of that. So we've talked a little bit about comparison in social media, and then, really understanding, your identity and, really starting to let go of the negative beliefs. I want us to do this activity as well. I think it's also really important when it comes to identity. We oftentimes, as young people, are trying to figure out what's next, who we are, and especially in this space, who do I want to be? Uh, what role do I want to play, even if it is in this career? I want you guys, because we're a small enough group, right? And I will, ask if people can either unmute or share it in the chat, but write down three things about you that have nothing to do with number one, grades or academia. I don't want to know about your degree or where you're going to school. I know that you guys are all doing amazing things, but nothing about your grades or academia, anything about your money, looks, popularity, relationship status. I'll also kind of, widen that to any kind of status or career success. So if you had to either, name three things about you or three qualities that you have that aren't related to any of these spheres, can you share them in the chat? And that will also give me a chance to get to know everybody in the room, because I love making new friends. I love meeting new people. I'll tell you why I love this exercise once I want at least three people to share. What are three things about you that have nothing to do with, where you went to school, what you do for work, etc.? Oh, I love that. We have a painter in the house. Artist vibes. Yeah, anything about anyone else? The color yellow. Why do you like the color yellow, if you don't mind me asking?
I love the color yellow too. Who said
I
that?
do too. I do.
Oh, yes.
I really do. But why do you love the color yellow? Is it Milton? Yeah. You don't have to share, but definitely. I know I love the color yellow. And again, maybe this is like a whole topic on its own, but there's this kind of theory of wearapy, right? The colors that you wear influence your psychological mood. And people who wear yellow and bright colors are oftentimes in better moods. Even if you didn't start off the day that way, wearing a bright color can oftentimes lift your mood. And I think that's really interesting when you also consider that a lot of, African cultures or indigenous peoples often used to wear bright colors for a very long time. Why? You know, just food for thought. It's a whole different session. But yeah, the color yellow, because it's
So,
bright, it makes you happy. Yeah,
yeah.
I love that. Gardening, cycling, nature. Oh yes, taking pictures. I love taking pictures. There's something so nice for me to be able to look back on an experience and remember people and remember moments really fondly. So, you
I like
know,
to try and make a habit of like when I'm feeling really, really happy to take a picture in that moment. And then, in your photos, you can make a little note. Like my storage
yes.
is always crumbling. And people ask me why, and they're like, "Are you taking pictures of yourself?" It's literally like flowers or like a bird.
And I love that because that's the way a lot of these tools were intended, you know? Right? Even Instagram, I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to age myself, but like I remember when Instagram first came on the scene, everybody would just kind of post random pictures of what made them happy.
Yeah.
It wasn't this curated, very perfect, aesthetic way of doing things. And there's nothing wrong with that too, right? Because everybody loves things that look good. But guess what? We also love things that feel good a lot more. So as you were kind of thinking about the things about yourself that have nothing to do with your title or what you've achieved, right? I want you to notice, if possible, what came up during that activity. Did any emotions come up? There are times I do this activity, especially when it comes to career coaching and whatnot. And a lot of times we tend to associate our worth or our value with the things that we produce or we do. And the things that have nothing to do with, money, looks, status, we never make enough time for them. I want you guys to really recognize how much time am I actually giving to these things that aren't productive on face value in society. Did you find it hard to separate your identity, or do you? Let me put that in the current tense. Do you find it hard to separate your identity from your achievement? And I'll kind of bring it back around to the comparison and social media thing, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, where you are asked to perform. How often do you still separate the identity of, for example, Thandi as a doctor from Thandi as a person? That was one of the things I had to really navigate. Everyone was, obviously I was happy when I graduated and, I started practicing, etc. Everyone was proud of me, right? At the same time, I often had to have conversations with people to say, hey, look, being a doctor is not all that is good about me. I was a person before this thing. I often think about Joseph in that scenario. And I want you guys to kind of remember that, the story of Joseph, isn't it interesting how we often peg it as a success story? If we were to, have Joseph as an influencer today on Instagram, he would be seen as, he would be posting himself in the Egyptian palace. Do you think he was posting at the pit? Do you think he was talking about all how his brothers hate him? Probably not. Maybe if he was messy, but generally we have a tendency as human beings to, look at things as a success story, look at things as like the overarching, in our effort to wanting to make things positive, we oftentimes neglect that the real picture is a lot bigger than that. So don't forget the real picture of who you are, the context that you're in, but also the things that people are posting or sharing about themselves. I know that we're probably, I don't want us to go over time too much. So I'll talk a little bit more about shame and stigma and then what we can actually do about this. So we've talked a lot already on, different aspects of your identity. We know the different aspects that go into maintaining a good, positive well-being. We've talked a little bit about, the things that kind of can get in the way. And I think it's also very important that we touch on shame and stigma, because kind of like comparison, I think this is one of the insidious poisons that if you don't learn to let go of or manage well as a young person, it can literally destroy anything else good in your life. It can. And I've seen it happen in so many different contexts, from the clinic to, even school, when we don't ask for help. Shame, stigma around literally anything, to be very honest, it tells us things like, don't talk about that. This is not the place to discuss XYZ. Nobody will understand, even if I do bring it up, right? I shouldn't complain. Others have it worse. I know that's a bit controversial. I should be stronger. Other people have dealt with this. Why am I, kind of failing here? These are some of the things or thoughts, and I'm sure you guys can think of, as you reflect, what thoughts and feelings, phrases kind of come up and fall under the bucket of shame and stigma. And as they do, I want you to really think about what actual impact is it having on me. I want you to really reflect on what is it stopping me from doing specifically. A lot of times, like the examples I put on the screen, it leads to silence. It leads to you not reaching out. The most obvious example that I'll give is in physical health. If you feel afraid or shameful for having something or suspecting that you need, I don't know, antibiotics, okay, yeah, in some families and contexts, right? Um, Taking medication is seen as like weak, honestly. My dad was that. If you ask my dad if he has a headache and you say, hey, take a paracetamol, he will say, no, I'm an African man. I'm a strong African man. And whilst I get it, yes, you are. It's also nice to remember that, like, yes, even strong African men can take paracetamol. You know, if in that case it leads to him not speaking out more about, needing, a simple tablet to help his headache, that can be dangerous in its own way, can't it? I don't know if there are any medical inclined people here, but there are lots of different causes of headache, some of which could be really, really serious, even life threatening. And if in your head you've already silenced yourself by saying, I am this is my identity, and I'm not going to, partake in asking for help or seeking guidance, seeking support, that can be very dangerous. Release that pressure valve. If there's one thing I want you to take from today's session, learn to release that pressure valve and escape that cage you have made for yourself. A lot of times, our mental well-being isn't just about external circumstances. It is about the cage that we build for ourselves. We need openness, we need community, and we need the ability to say, actually, yeah, I feel a little bit weird about asking for this, but I'm going to do it anyway. That ability to, deal with bullying, academic pressure, loss and grief. These are some of the things that we have stigma a lot of times in talking about. And that's why I encourage openness if you're actually going to tackle your mental well-being. So I'll talk a little bit about connection and then what we can actually do. And then I'll leave the last activity for you to do as you kind of go home or continue on these next two few days of the program, right? We all know that connection is crucial for mental well-being. It affects how we learn, how we're able to relate to other people, impacts how we're able to relate to our jobs, how we're able to function on a daily basis. I think we've all been in, for example, a classroom at school where the teacher can't manage it, and it's just chaos. Everybody's kind of, either distracted or no work is being done. And maybe, you have negative experiences in that class, people doing or saying things to you. That we obviously know that that impacts how well you're able to concentrate and do any work in that class, right? So why would it be different in any other context? Now, as we grow up, as we grow into our careers, we're oftentimes forced to be in negative spaces, toxic spaces. Toxic spaces is another kind of whole leadership topic I would love, to discuss and share more resources on. But navigating toxic workspaces to be healthy, it's linked to our physical health. Stress, trauma, it can actually impact our immune systems. A lot of the conditions that, disproportionately affect marginalized people or people who may be immigrants or younger or older, they come from a lot of stress and trauma that is not dealt with correctly. Our heart, our digestion, all of these systems were meant to work together. So don't think that in neglecting your mental health to achieve anything material, don't think in neglecting it, you are somehow, protecting other aspects. Your whole being is impacted when we are in these spaces. So healthy connection is vital, especially outside of toxic spaces. It influences, of course, decision making, our productivity, people being able to, really, tackle things early and well enough, being regulated and having a nervous system that is calm and balanced. These things really, do impact us. So when it comes to us, thinking about how we support others, how we function in community, how do you actually start to build those, relationships of connection. I want you to remember, whenever you're talking to anybody, especially this week, you really never know how people are doing. Number one, if you have somebody in your life that you're like, this is my strong friend, right? This is the friend, they never need anybody. Like, they're the ones who are there for me, actually. Really check in on them. Try and have an intentional conversation. How do we actually build intentional, genuine connections these days, especially with social media, etc.? Again, you maybe won't be able to do all of these in one go. I don't want you to. I want you to, either take a picture or I'll share these resources after. But today, even as we speak before the end of this session, if you can, send one person you've been meaning to talk to. Think about one person you've been meaning to talk to. Ask them how they're doing and when they're free for a check-in call or coffee or, meet up. Send that message to one person you've been meaning to talk to, somebody who you genuinely connect with. You really value sitting down and talking to them. And if possible, try and arrange a time that you can meet in person to be social with that person. There's lots of different ways to build genuine connection, but I want to encourage us that, just because you know somebody from school, from church, from work, it doesn't always mean that you know them well enough, or that you're supporting them well enough, or that you too are being supported. There's still extra work needed to connect with that person on a basis that will actually be meaningful for the both of you. There's other ways that you can do support for others and yourself for free or without any resources. But I want you to really pay attention to this. Asking how are you really doing? That can actually save lives, that question alone. I oftentimes talk to my sister and the other people who were impacted by the loss of my friend many years ago. If we'd actually been able to have conversations with her and ask her, how are you actually doing? Maybe things would have been different. And I don't beat myself up about that now because you only know as much as you know now. But now that we know better, how can we do better and check in with people? Ask them how they're really doing. Again, I won't even go into big depth with each of these because I think a lot of it is covered in generic mental health conversations and presentations. But let's try to start learning how to listen with empathy, learning how to actually ask good questions and listen actively. It's a whole, lifelong journey. Offering practical support. If somebody is complaining about, not having enough food to eat, or maybe not, let me not even say complaining. Sometimes you can listen to your friends well enough that you hear the things that they're not saying. And if you notice and are able to actively listen and you're listening with empathy, notice that your friend is struggling with something practical that either you could support with, why not? Why not support someone practically? But B, if they're not able to, or if you're not able to support somebody directly, how can you connect them to somebody who might be able to? I think that's a big part of connection that people forget. It's not just about you being the person to answer and be somebody else's hero. We're asking you to connect other people to people and services and resources that might actually be able to help. And of course, continuing that open dialogue so that you're not, again, just throwing a bunch of information or, saying, I think you need therapy to somebody when they come in to you with something confidential, but being able to have that conversation as to when they might need more professional help. Even if that professional help is talking to your pastor or talking to, a family doctor, right? Somebody who might be able to give you more insight into that, situation. As we kind of, start to wrap up, the main themes of, this presentation, but also my life and my journey when it comes to purpose is growth and resilience. A lot of things will continue to happen to us, and not all of it will be positive, but how we learn to grow through it and how we learn to be resilient without also forsaking ourselves or cracking under that pressure, it is paramount to you achieving your purpose. Purpose is not always a clear roadmap. As many of you in the room here today, you're continuing to work work on different dreams that you may have, or maybe you don't know where you're going next. Know that I too didn't know where I was going next at many points. It's okay. It's very normal. Resilience, though, and working through that, it's not about never struggling. It's about learning how to continue on even despite or through those difficult moments. So some kind of just key takeaway messages before I go into actual practical actions. When I think about, how, so you want to be a diamond, right? Pressure is required to make diamonds. But is it every time that pressure creates diamonds? No. Why? It's the environment, sometimes it's the materials, a lot of different factors. I'm not a geologist, right? But it's not always pressure will make a diamond. So what actually is needed to turn the hardships that you're going through into something meaningful for, the better impact of your community, yourself, your family, etc. I encourage you to focus on your next step instead of the whole kind of future. Instead of having the whole kind of 5-year plan mapped out, I say, it's nice to have, but focus on the next immediate step. If getting through the next 1 hour or day is all you can do, focus on that. Creating simple weekly routines. I'll talk a little bit more about this next, but pray and reflect consistently. I've talked a lot about reflection here and given you some questions that you can reflect on. Now with ChatGPT, but also so many other resources, there are so many different ways that you can find to prompt reflection from yourself in order to grow, to find your blind spots, to find your areas of healing. Keep trying, even if something doesn't work the first time. I, didn't get too much into my academic or career background, but trust me, it was full and riddled of failure. Even to this day, I am still failing, and that's okay. It's about trying and trying and trying again, especially if you know that it's something that you want or that it is part of your mission or something you need to acquire to be of service to others. In that case, you need to learn, you need to grow. And a big component about learning and growing, I encourage you all to start doing, is keep evidence of it. And that's where journaling comes in. We talked a little bit about, photos, but even voice notes, even, notes or videos that you record just for yourself to capture where you are now, how you're feeling, but also how you're navigating through things, when you're proud of yourself. This is not for ego, right? This is not for the external validation. This is for objective evidence to keep yourself motivated. And also so that you can share one day. I wouldn't be able to share a lot of the things today if I didn't remember it. So as your test becomes part of somebody else's testimony, I really want you to remind you, keep evidence of it. Ask yourself, what has this experience or season taught me? What is the silver lining? And how does this make me stronger in some ways? Now, not everything will make you stronger. That's okay. Like I said, not every situation will become a diamond. So as we kind of wrap up, actual tangible actions, what can I do now? People that I often work with, whether it's in leadership or careers, etc., even in medicine, mental health, Thandi, I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I don't have the time or the money for my mental health. The thing I'll always say is go back to basics, absolute basics. I don't even need to let you guys know what these basics are, but your sleep having balanced sleep and eating patterns, finding the bottom or like the core of this is finding what works for you and sticking to it. Regular physical activity. I know a lot of people will also touch on this, but again, I'll also share resources after this. But outside of the happy hormones that are produced, 15 minutes of sunlight outside is all that's needed to actually just boost your mood by a significant amount. Add that to walking, add that to dance, add that to riding your bike. Very simple, free ways to incorporate physical activity, even if it's that you are going to do squats in your, school or, dormitory room. Do it as long as it, improves your physical well-being. And as we've kind of touched on, a reminder to build those healthy social connections. As humans, we don't need social media. We need to be social. We need that connection and interaction and to be known as people. So stop scrolling and put down the phone. Now that hopefully you've messaged somebody for an intentional check-in, I really want you to follow through, be social. And, as you kind of, navigate these reflections and my talk tonight, I know that we've not had, too much discussion, but I hope that I've been able to give you enough food for thought. Be kind. Remember that everyone you meet is fighting a battle that you can't see. We are oftentimes blinded by what we are going through ourselves, remembering that others are also going through their own, remembering that you are still worthy, even as you are figuring your life out. It's important to keep reminding yourself of that and keep consistently taking the next baby step towards, building ways for you to cope with the pressure so that you're able to become a diamond at the end of the day. Um, I guess now I'll kind of take any questions if there are any comments if there are any. Feel free to drop it in the anonymous Q&A box or in the chat box. But as we come, to the end of the session, I want to say thank you, first of all. Thank you for listening. Remember, pressure only makes diamonds when you allow those difficult seasons to shape you and not to destroy you. So we need to learn how to become, stronger within, but then also stronger for the people around us. Feel free to ask me any questions around not just mental health, but maybe also careers or other resources. Again, mental health is a big part of you living a quality life. And so I encourage you to do reach out, continue the conversation. If anything does pop up, again, I'll also be sharing resources. But thank you for being here and at least having the opportunity to, explore mental health in a different way. If you notice, I didn't use any numbers or facts or statistics in this presentation. And that was very intentional because this is not meant to be a research paper. This is not meant to be an academic discussion. We all know that a lot of people are impacted by it. But I really want you to think about your journey and how you're impacted by it and how you'd like to deal with things better and where you can start to go for support. What are the little things you can do to start, building more for yourself. So I don't know if there's anything anyone wants to share, but thank you so much and have a wonderful evening, rest of your week, guys.
Thank you so much, Thandi, for your presentation. We do have in this anonymous Q&A box, I am seeing quite a few questions. I do need to, some of them are kind of related, so I will kind of be sifting through as we go. If anyone does
Sure.
want to unmute, you can put your hand up at any point, but I can start with one of these. Okay, let's go. Do you think parents can unintentionally pass their own fears, goals, and pressures onto their children?
Yes, they can, most definitely. Um, I'll even go as far as to say that it's common. And, not just that it's common, when parents, and again, any parents in the room can correct me, but when nobody teaches you how to be a parent. Nobody gives you an instruction manual. Like, these are the things you need to teach them. These are the things you absolutely don't need to. That comes with added thing of, our parents pass down amazing things to us as children and as community members. Maybe your aunt passes something down to you, both good and bad though. And so oftentimes, they are oftentimes people, let me not just say your parents, but people are talking from their experiences and the lessons that they've learned. And it is very critical for your success to be able to have discernment, to take things with a grain of salt sometimes, to be able to think through whether or not the advice, or if not advice, the fear, the projection, the comments that somebody is giving you is actually helpful in your situation currently, right? We see it a lot of the time, especially with careers. Everything is changing in the job market. So what worked in the 70s, 80s, 90s is not going to work today. And that's okay. It doesn't make parents any less than for sharing. I still strongly believe that, the generations need to share their experiences, thoughts, opinions. However, it is important for us all to be aware that people often do project or share their anxieties or fears, and now that's why it's up to you to start to build that tough skin or barrier or membrane almost that sifts through when people are saying these things. You're not just internalizing all of it and believing it 100%. It's going back and studying it for yourself, asking why, applying, etc. So yes, short answer is yes, parents can unintentionally, pass down maybe some negative things. However, it's also up to us to learn how to not take that on and recognize when, you can say, maybe my mom is speaking from a place of fear here. My mom didn't want me to leave the UK and go to medical school. She wanted me to go to medical school, but she was like, no, just stay in the country. And I'm always glad to this day that I did, that I left, because again, I knew that it was part of my purpose. I knew that it was part of the next step that I needed to do. And that, again, is where you can exercise courage, where you can exercise discernment. And that's where, again, you are a human being here to make mistakes. So, being able to balance what your parents say with what is needed for your future and your purpose is very crucial for your success. I hope I answered your question.
I think you did. Okay, there's quite a bit about parents in this, so I'm gonna try
Sure.
and put a balance here. This one says, how can parents encourage ambition without putting too much pressure on their children?
I think that's a really good question. And you know what? I'm still probably exploring it myself. But when it comes to ambition, number one, definitely trying to, it depends on what stage your child is at. I'll definitely say that. When you are, I definitely say under 18 or under 16, I encourage parents to encourage their, young ones to try things, to, focus on developing the habits around the thing, and maybe not necessarily the thing itself. I'll give an example. Rather than forcing your child to maybe learn an instrument, you say you must become a cellist. You must become a florist. You must become this musician. You must learn how to do this thing really well. Rather than maybe saying that, what are the things you're trying to encourage in them learning that instrument? Maybe you're trying to encourage consistency, hard work, developing the skill around learning, right? Learning an instrument too, working with others in an orchestra or choir, etc. So in that case, now you know what you're actually trying to achieve. I encourage parents to now, really try and be supportive in, that experience of the young person learning those things or achieving those things. So if your child, they say, they come home from practice one day and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Rather than mandating it as a thing of, you must do this, I've already paid for your classes, I encourage you to maybe have a discussion and explore. Oftentimes, people in general, but especially young people, we don't even know the surface context of why we're saying the things we're saying. So, what is actually deeper underneath that statement of, I don't want to do this? Well, maybe they had a really difficult session. Maybe, their, teacher or instructor spoke to them in a certain way and it's rubbed them the wrong way, or maybe they don't feel good enough, etc. Exploring those emotions behind it definitely helps. I know a lot of young people, or a lot of parents struggle to motivate your teenager or your child. It's oftentimes not even up to you to force them to do things, but lean into their strengths. Try and find little ways for them to find what they're good at, what they kind of enjoy, any little thing that they show interest in. If possible, if it's a positive thing, or if there's a way to find positivity in it, find ways to encourage it, right? Talk to them about, having ambition, not just around careers, but around who they want to be as a person. And then it's easier to have that conversation on, okay, well, let's backtrack. Let's say you want to be a person who lives in a beautiful house and has a beautiful family. What are the skills needed for that? Don't you think you're going to have to, I don't know, maybe have a good job or make, good money for yourself to have a good house? What are the things you can do? And then you start to backtrack there. I think ambition is a lot easier for young people when you have a clear roadmap and a why. So if you can start at that why, what is that, life that you want to live? And then the older they get, also start to transition into, who do you want to be? Do you want to be a person of integrity? Do you want to be a person who is known for, supporting others? Maybe you want to be a person who works very independently. That's okay too, right? But to start backtracking as to how you actually get there and working with your child rather than dictating really goes a long way for them to start to understand, that they are the ones who are owning this journey. At the end of the day, as a parent, there's only so much you can do for so long. And it's a natural instinct for a lot of kids to rebel, especially if somebody's telling you to do it. However, working with somebody, asking good questions, taking a couple of even short courses on conversation and coaching, that alone starts to get people to see that actually this is my journey and I'm responsible for my mistakes, but I'm also responsible for creating a beautiful life for myself. And I need to do the work that's needed to get there. So there's a lot more that can be done to foster ambition. Exposure helps. Getting them to talk to actual people living in those areas or fields or careers, right? Especially if that person is, a similar age or has gone through similar experiences, start to encourage mentorship or those conversations. And if not conversations, sometimes YouTube videos, sometimes posts here and there, not attacking, but trying to support and get conversations started. I hope that starts to answer that question around ambition. It's not easy, but you need to co-create and co-work with your young person as they are becoming.
Yeah. The next one says, okay, when someone is seen as a high performer, it can sometimes lead to increased expectations from others. How do I cope when the external pressure starts to feel heavy? Sometimes I get tired of keeping up appearances.
I love that question. That's a really wonderful question. Could you repeat it again? I just want to make sure that I answer as well as I can in the moment.
Yeah, it says when someone is seen as a high performer, it can sometimes lead to increased expectations from others. How can I cope when the external pressure starts to feel heavy? Sometimes I get tired of keeping up appearances.
So I'll start backwards. Number one, it's normal to feel tired. Know that and give yourself permission to rest when you feel tired. And resting may look like so many different things, but really finding the things that recharge you as a person. And if you go back to that activity we discussed about the things or the things you like to do or who you are outside of the titles, those are usually the things that actually recharge us when it comes to feeling intentional, when it comes to our rest. So it's okay to be tired of holding it together or performing in a certain way. Number two, increased expectations is not always a bad thing. I know it can feel like a lot, especially when you're kind of thrown in the deep end or, you know, there's a lot at stake, right? You need to do X, Y, Z. It can feel a lot, but also finding ways to positively frame that, to say that, people, I'll give an example that, really helped me to cope with the pressure in med school. I was so scared. I was so scared of failing and disappointing my family and wasting all this tuition money, etc., and just not being able to achieve. And at some point, I realized, like, if I'm going to stay in that fear forever, I'm going to stay paralyzed. Your nervous system will literally interpret it eventually as a threat, and then that's where fight, flight, or freeze will come in. And a lot of times you will actually do more harm to yourself and the work you're trying to do if you keep that pressure on. So I know it gets heavy, but now let's start to positively reframe it. In med school, I used to say, I know I'm feeling a lot of expectation right now, but it's because people believe in my ability to be XYZ. Or you can say, I believe in why I'm doing this. That alone is, a simple rephrase to say, I know, this weight is heavy, but again, pressure makes diamonds. If I don't go through this, I might not learn what I need to learn or gain the connections I need to gain. In the grand scheme of things, this will mean something. So, how do I learn to cope? Increased expectations is not always a bad thing, I'll definitely say. Now, yes, if you are a high performer, people kind of get used to it and over rely on you. And honestly, my advice there is, number one, boundaries. Again, when it comes to your rest, when it comes to your time, when it comes to the things that recharge you, but then also learning how to be strategic and have discernment. I highly recommend, if you have anybody in your life that you'd like to work with, anybody you look up to, an older person who's successful in their career, but even if it's another career coach, or reach out to me myself. I do a lot of youth mentorship and coaching, even virtually. We discuss questions like this. And I always say that you need to have, number one, a clear vision for what you want to do in this season or, your life if possible, but who you want to be. And then now you need to be strategic and exercise discernment. Strategic in that, does this opportunity or the way that this person is engaging with me, or this person seems, I've observed that this person or this opportunity, this workplace, maybe takes advantage of my skills. I don't know if it feels aligned with my personal values. When you have a clear vision and know your personal values a lot deeper, it's easier then to exercise, strategy and work with somebody who has experience on, how do you still get to where you want to go, but, rein it back from those spaces where maybe you're expected to do too much. And also how to have strategy around those conversations. I recommend the book Difficult Conversations to learn how to start saying no to people, projects, etc. But then again, discernment is always going to be the thing at the end of the day, that if you practice it, you exercise it as a muscle, you get better at being able to extract yourself from situations where, expectations are increasing and you're not coping well. It's okay to also drop something and say, you know what, I thought I would have the capacity to do this thing, but maybe I don't. And learning how to not judge yourself when you let go of things or you have to move on to a different project or you have to rest. That is also a key component for being a high performer. You, as a high performer, you do need to learn to turn it on and to some extent turn it off. as well. So I always say work hard, but you want to also play hard or rest just as hard as you work. I hope that answers your question a little bit more, but that's a discussion I'd love to continue to have. How do you, as a high performer, let it go? You have to be intentional.
Mm. The next question is actually related to rest. I feel like the more stressed I become, the more I put into doing things and overperforming. For example, all-nighters and overextending. How do I combat this?
Yeah, it's a difficult one. I want to say that. I've definitely been in that space where I'm like, you know, if I can just pull an all-nighter, if I can just like work consistently for the next 2 days and like get everything out of like the way, then I'll be. And that's a trap. I want you to sometimes, yeah, recognize that that can oftentimes be a trap. It's a hamster wheel that you will oftentimes never get off of. And it might be counterintuitive, but there are times where you're going to have to focus on you again building intentional rest time or breaks or abilities, ways to relieve that pressure valve so that you can actually do the stressful things. But you know what, if I'm also being very honest, there are seasons in your life where that stress is is non-negotiable. There are seasons in your life or your career where you will have to be a little more on the ball, and recognizing that it's not for forever, this too shall pass, being able again to talk to others about it, to find ways to delegate, right? The tools to actually like get things off of your plate. If you can, outsource certain things so that you're taking things off of your mental load. I just encourage everyone here to continue to learn productivity and more so intentional ways to cope with your life, because that will give you the tools. And again, if you talk to coaches and stuff, you might have more support there, but they give you the tools and frameworks so that you can actually deal with very stressful periods and seasons. But it's also important, if you know that they are coming up, to be able to prepare for them effectively. And more than anything, again, find ways to relieve that pressure valve. Yes, you're right, the more stressed you are, the more you do find yourself overperforming or doing things that are misaligned. So you need to take a rest stop. You need to take a pit stop, even if, again, it's 15 minutes, but you are doing nothing. That can reset yourself just a little bit more, right? If you do it regularly enough until the end of the season, you will have time to, again, debrief and reflect. And as you reflect, what did you learn? Write it down so that when you are going through that thing again, you are now approaching it again. Challenge yourself to be better. You're now approaching it from a space of growth and not, oh my gosh, this stressful thing happened to me before. How do I deal with it? I hope that answers your question a little bit, but I'd love to talk more about that too. Go ahead.
I definitely relate to that one. And it can be, it's hard because it can be good, but also it can be bad for you. I definitely, the whole all-nighter stuff is a bad habit that I inherited from GCSEs. Like, just that, like, I have to pass this. Let's go. Like, we're learning
Yeah.
this. We're learning this no matter what. We're doing these practice papers no matter what. And it helps in certain instances when you are falling behind and you do improve. But then also I've had situations where it's got so bad that I've literally passed out because
Yeah.
my body cannot take it anymore. So boundaries with yourself as well as important as boundaries with others.
Yeah. 100%. I don't know if there's anything else, but
Another parent one.
sure.
We have three, okay, that we can do. Some of them are quite similar, so I would just, yeah. How do I respectfully deal with my parents constantly comparing me to my peers? Why can't you be like your friend, etc.?
Yeah. I think that's a great question. Number one, I don't think it ever ends. And I think it's also important to recognize that for a lot of our parents, it's, yeah, a lot of our older folks, they don't even mean it maliciously. Maybe some do, but most don't mean it maliciously. They don't mean it in a way that is ideally hurtful to you. I think oftentimes they're trying to do it almost in a topsy-turvy encouragement way, right? If somebody else can do it, so can you, right? That's the way I'm choosing to positively rephrase that, right? But it's I think it's important to, number one, if you're able to, bring it up in the most calmest, respectful, a time when they are resting, not just coming back from work. Choose your time effectively, consult books and other videos around difficult conversations, but just kind of trying to kindly address it and say, it really hurts me when you compare me to other people, especially, and then, using examples if you're able to, noting down examples. For example, when you said XYZ about this cousin, it really made me feel this way and it impacts me like this. It's a difficult conversation to have, but it is important for you to have it. Well, no matter what the outcome of that conversation is, you have to learn how to open your mouth, advocate for yourself, talk a little bit, and have that discussion. Now, there are, various different ways people might react. Some parents will take it on, some won't, some will change, some won't. That is outside of your control. You did the thing in your control, which was, number one, addressing it, and then number two, starting to build resilience or a buffer. That's where you need to become so strong on your identity or who you want to be, that other people being compared to you doesn't faze you. It's a muscle to grow. It's a muscle you must grow. Again, even to this day, I have people comparing me, oh, so and so is doing XYZ in their career. And I'm like, that's great. And I genuinely don't have to, I don't feel any way, because again, you have to exercise that muscle of protecting yourself, really, and protecting your own mental well-being. If you're able to, not, if, again, usually I'm assuming it's a conversation where they're mentioning it or a passing comment. Recognizing again that, comparison is the thief of joy. And a lot of our parents wouldn't even use certain examples if they knew the whole story or what that person was dealing with. So recognizing that, the person that they're comparing you to is also a human being. And so, you have to have these little like phrases and start to build again your happiness with yourself and your satisfaction with your growth and your journey and your identity, that it doesn't even impact you at the end of the day, whether or not they're comparing you to John, Jack, or Jimmy. You are on your own journey, and recognizing and protecting that will be key for having peace and balance as you move throughout the world. But I still recommend having that conversation first, even though it's difficult. At least you know that you did your due diligence and you did the work of addressing it. And whatever the outcome is, that's okay, but at least you tried. And then your next step will be now acquiring tools that any comments anybody can make won't faze you. Yeah.
And how do I deal with feeling stuck in life?
That's a good one. Again, feeling stuck, there are, number one, I think everyone will go through periods of feeling stuck, no matter what you're doing or how clear you are on your identity, your dreams, your visions. It can happen for so many different reasons. And number one, I'll obviously encourage everyone to go back to basics. That's the time I really want you to prioritize building in some habits around doing something that's healthy, doing something that is meaningful to you, having healthier, connections and conversations with people. Going back to basics will start to give you at least like the basic framework or infrastructure, so that you're not coming from this place of being stuck because you are, how to say it, you're giving yourself the best chance when you go back to basics. Now, if you're feeling stuck, that looks differently for everybody. If that looks like you not even being able to get out of bed, or you not being able to do the things that you used to enjoy, or you having, different dark thoughts. That's where I encourage you, like let somebody know I'm really feeling stuck. And somebody in your real life, somebody who loves you, ideally. But even if it's not somebody who loves you, some people feel more comfortable telling a stranger. So find, little ways if you can, even if that is your family doctor, to say, you know what, I feel stuck. Again, your doctor is not just there ideally to, prescribe you medication. They're also there to talk through things with you. That's also where therapists and other, professionals can come in too. But again, it doesn't even have to get to that extent. Whoever is the closest for you to talk to about, you feeling stuck, talk to them. I encourage, again, as part of going back to basics, do journal, start to reflect on why you might be feeling like this. Um, Take some time again off social media if you're able to, and if you are already doing these things, or if your version of being stuck, you are doing what you need to do, but you just don't know your direction, I encourage you to challenge yourself to experience or do something that's outside of your comfort zone, to learn something, or to learn with a coach or somebody who's ready to have conversations like this. Maybe they can point you towards something that you would have never thought. The idea is to start getting other perspectives in and start considering the options for your life. I think oftentimes when we feel stuck, we are either paralyzed by too many options, or we don't feel like we have what it takes to get to the option that you really, really, really do want, or you don't know what to do next, or you feel like you don't have any options left. You feel like others have more. That's where, again, if you're able to start, exploring things, resources, experiences, options with other people, that is when, an open mouth, closed mouth never gets fed. So if you're feeling stuck, go back to basics of taking care of yourself, but start to have those conversations. Um, be real, be honest about it, and you'll be so surprised how much a conversation alone can bring you out of being stuck, or at least prompt you towards doing more and doing better for your life. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. But being stuck is a part of the journey.
Thank you. The last one that we'll go for is, can your purpose change?
Yes, I agree. I agree. I say yes, it can, absolutely. Your purpose can change, especially in the light of, new information or new experiences, right? When I was a kid, I used to say I wanted to be a doctor to help people. And then you grow up and you realize, like, there are many very different ways to help people. What does that actually look like for you? And so it's part of your journey that as you are establishing your values, your identity, or sometimes it'll be a one-off big event, something bad or good will happen to you, that kind of changes the way you look at things. That can change your purpose too. So yes, it's okay for it to change. Allow it to kind of evolve. Allow it to, continuously align again with the person that you're trying to be, or who the impact you're trying to have in the world. Have patience with yourself. These things aren't fixed in stone. I always say our thoughts are thoughts because, they're going to change, and that's okay. But it's about, flowing with the change, learning how to be flexible and not, defining yourself to be too rigid. Otherwise, you will definitely break. Things that are rigid will break, So it's okay for your purpose to change. Mine has changed many times. That's okay. But I just hope and challenge that your purpose is changing in alignment with, you know, um, your experiences, who you're trying to be.
Thank you very much. Would you consider that pivoting? What you just, that was my,
Yeah,
my
I think it was a nice pivoting like phrase and statement, and
question.
yeah,
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. I haven't seen any new ones come in.
mm.
So I think we'll leave it there with the Q&A. Thank you again, Tandy, for your presentation. Your links that you've put in your presentation. I will attach them to the booklet if anyone does want to get in contact with you with any questions. Before we close, I'd like to say that the next portion, if you do want to stay and do some prayer, journaling, reflection, as always, sorry, that is open for you to stay. If not, you're free to leave. And we'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. I would like to invite Elder Sam to do the closing prayer, please.
Yeah, let us pray. Our dear Father in heaven, we're so grateful that you've made it possible for us to have this session this evening, looking at things that pose pressure in our lives, things that weighs us down, and what strategies that we can put in place to mitigate against that. And Lord, we thank you for allowing Thandi to be with us and for inspiring her mind to be able to share what she shared with us this evening. We pray that as we go and contemplate on it, as we ponder over what we've heard this evening and the discussions that we've had, you, O Lord, help us and inspire our minds individually in ways that will help us to be able to live our lives well, to take care of ourselves, to take care of our precious brains that you've given us. And Lord, that will be more productive for you and not for ourselves. Lord, as we depart here, we pray that may you go with us and may you go before us, be with us. And tomorrow bring us back here safely. In the name of Jesus, we prayed. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.